This video will cover the digestive system as part of the human body unit. What you'll need to know for the digestive system are some of the anatomical features. So that would be the mouth, the salivary glands, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, colon, rectum, anus, liver, pancreas, and gallbladder. You'll also need to know the function of these structures, and in particular, what they do in terms of digestion and absorption. You'll also be expected to relate that structure to its function. So we'll look at particular how the intestine is adapted for absorption and some of the other features of the digestive system, digestive tract, that allow it to do its functions. So the purpose of digestion is because every living cell requires a constant supply of food for our energy, for metabolism, for growth, to repair damaged tissue, and for immunity. But before that food can be used, which is absorption, it must first be broken down, which is digestion. So digestion is where we take large and soluble molecules and make them into something small and usable. Once we have broken them down, these small molecules can then be absorbed, enter into the bloodstream, and travel to where they are required. So the 7 nutrients in your food that we need for all of these functions are the carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, and also vitamins, minerals, and fibre. And while not strictly a nutrient, water is also essential for healthy function of the body. So what happens when you sit down for a meal? How do we get these large food particles into something small that we can use? So there are 2 main methods of digestion, physical and chemical, and we'll look at both. So physical breakdown occurs in 3 places: the mouth, the stomach, and the small intestine. And this is where things are broken down mechanically. Also have chemical breakdown. So same 3 sites that we're looking at, because things are being chewed and mixed and ground with substances of the digestive tract, they can be broken down by chemicals, in particular enzymes. 3 main enzymes: carbohydrases, to break down carbohydrates; proteases, to break down proteins; and lipases, which break down fats. Now they do this with the help of a substance called bile, which we'll talk about later on. You might want to pause this slide to review the main features of the digestive system. For our need-to-know structures, the ones that we'll find in the head are the mouth, which are there to start the physical portion of digestion. So your teeth and your tongue physically will mix up the food, breaking it down into smaller units. But the chemical breakdown of food also begins in the mouth. You have salivary glands that secrete saliva, which contain some enzymes that will start breaking down carbohydrates as soon as they enter into the mouth. Moving down to the chest area, we have the esophagus. So this is also known as the food pipe. It's essentially a long muscular tube that connects the mouth to the stomach. So the rest of our need-to-know structures, they'll all be found within the abdomen. So moving on to the stomach, it's a muscular sac about the size of 2 fists. It essentially acts as a storage tank for the food that you're beginning to digest, but it also is responsible for the chemical digestion. So hydrochloric acid, which is found within the stomach, will start to break down food particles, as well as killing any bacteria, for example, that might have travelled along with the food. And digestion will continue to take place within the stomach. Once food has been churned up here it will leave the stomach and enter into the small intestine. Now, the first section of the intestine is the duodenum, which will receive that partially digested food from the stomach. So other substances, other chemicals coming from the pancreas, the liver, the gallbladder, they'll all enter directly into the duodenum to end digestion here. So the majority of digestion will take place within the duodenum, the small intestine. Other structures, other parts of the small intestine, you do not need to know the names of, but this is where absorption will mostly take place. So the jejunum, that middle section of the small intestine, digestion is essentially completed in the duodenum. So what's left to do now is absorption. So the movement out of the intestine and into the bloodstream. And then finally, that last section will connect up the small intestine to the large. So the large intestine is a structure known as the colon. Again, you do not need to know the names of the individual sections, but to know that it's a colon and what takes place here. So we said digestion ends in the duodenum, absorption takes place in the rest of the small intestine. So essentially, we're now left with the waste products or the things that were too large that could not be broken down anymore. However, some water is absorbed from the colon. What we now have is that fecal matter, the waste products that we want to eliminate. From there, these waste products will move down through the colon and enter into the rectum, where it will be stored as feces until it's eliminated. So for elimination, it must pass through the anus, which is a ring of muscles that open and close to allow for defecation. We'll now move on to looking at the accessory organs. So while they're not strictly part of the digestive system, they are essential for its functionality. They'll release chemicals that we need to do digestion. So these are the liver, the pancreas, and the gallbladder. So the liver is a really large organ. It's the second largest in the body, and its job for the digestive system is to produce bile. So bile is a dark green liquid. It helps and it aids in the digestion of fats. So it's made by the liver. As we'll see, it is actually stored within the gallbladder. So the gallbladder will store and release that bile that has come from the liver. So it contains salts, which help to absorb and break down fats, but it'll also emulsify those fats, mobilizing it, making it easier for the body, for the enzymes to come along and break those fats down. And finally, we have the pancreas. So its main function is in regulating blood sugar levels, but in terms of the digestive system, it releases some chemicals, some substances that are very useful. So some digestive enzymes that are made by the pancreas, they'll enter directly into the duodenum to start breaking down the food particles that reach there. It also makes bicarbonate, which is useful for neutralizing that hydrochloric acid of the stomach, prevent any problems. Now might be a good time to pause this video and attempt to label your diagram of the digestive system. Here are the answers for your label diagram to review. We'll now move on to looking at the functions of the digestive system. Some we've already talked about or hopefully are self-explanatory, so we won't need to discuss in detail. The 6 functions are 1, ingestion, so the bringing of the food into the mouth. 2, which is secretion, which we will talk about in more detail. 3 is the motility or the movement of the food throughout the system. Fourth is digestion, which we've talked about already. Fifth is absorption. We'll go into a little more detail there. And finally, sixth is the excretion or the elimination of the waste. So looking at secretion, we have substances such as mucus, bile, and enzymes that are being released from different parts of the digestive system that will aid in the breakdown of the food particles. So these enzymes, we've talked a lot about, but they are very, very important. They make digestion happen much quicker. We also have motility, which is known as peristalsis, which is the contraction and relaxation of the smooth muscle of the intestines and other features, such as the esophagus, that allow for the movement of food. So the muscle behind the food particle will be contracting, thus pushing it forward, whereas the muscle in front will be relaxed, allowing for the passage. Then the next muscle will contract and the one in front relax. Then it'll be that muscle's turn to contract and thus creating a wave-like motion in order to move the food through the system. Finally, we have absorption. So this is the movement of the nutrients out of the intestine and into the bloodstream. So it must be able to pass through the intestinal wall. So we'll have a closer look at the small intestine to see what structures, what characteristics it have that make this possible. So it's very, very similar to your alveoli of the respiratory system. So these folds within the small intestine are known as villi. So the villi have a large surface area that allows more absorption to take place. They also have a thin cell layer, again making it easy for the nutrients to pass through. And the third feature it has is a very good blood supply. So it makes it very quick for the nutrients to leave the intestine and enter into the bloodstream. So what to do now is you can review this video at any time, work on the digestive section of your workbook, make some study notes. If you are looking to do the digestive system for your report, there's some suggestions of which diseases you can look into, and there's also the link to the Kahoot quiz if you want to review and test your knowledge on the digestive system.